All right, today we're going to take a little trip back in time. We're talking about the dawn of the mobile internet and a technology that, for a lot of us, was the very first taste of the web on a phone, WAP, or the Wireless Application Protocol.
Now, the idea was absolutely revolutionary, right? The internet in your pocket. But it was far from perfect. So the big question we're really digging into here is this. Was WAP a brilliant, necessary first step, or was it just a fundamentally flawed pioneer of the mobile web?
To figure that out, let's start with the hurdles. And believe me, WAP faced some massive challenges right out of the gate, especially when it came to something we all care about, keeping our information secure.
So this list kind of lays out the 5 big security threats WAP was up against. You've got everything from physical security, someone stealing your phone, to the potential for viruses. But we're going to zero in on the 2 that were the real deal breakers, that gateway problem, and its incredibly weak encryption.
Okay, so the biggest, most glaring flaw was something called the WAP gateway. See, unlike today, where your phone makes a direct, secure connection, all your WAP traffic had to go through this middleman, the gateway. And here's the crazy part. Your secure encrypted data would get to the gateway, get completely decrypted into plain, readable text, and then re-encrypted to be sent on its way. This created this massive vulnerability, a man-in-the-middle weak spot where your private info was just sitting there, exposed. Not exactly what you want for mobile banking, is it?
And to make matters worse, the encryption itself was, well, laughably weak. WAP was using a 40-bit DES algorithm. To put that into perspective for you, today's standards are usually 128 or even 256-bit. A 40-bit key is so short that it was super vulnerable to what's called a brute force attack. That just means a hacker could literally just guess their way through all the combinations and crack it. It was like locking your front door with a padlock you could open with a paperclip.
But hey, it wasn't all bad. I know, it sounds pretty grim, but despite these huge security flaws, WAP held a ton of promise. There were actually some really good reasons why the entire industry was so excited about it.
And here's why everyone was so hyped. First off, WAP was an open standard, so no single company owned it. It was also vendor and network independent, which meant it should work on any phone with any carrier. And for its time, it was even considered fast. This idea that it could be this universal standard that you could put on almost any device, that was a huge, huge deal.
But then came the reality of actually using it. And that promise on paper, it didn't always translate into a great experience for people or a good business model for companies.
And this is where that promise really hit a brick wall. So yeah, it was fast for its time, but in practice, the speeds were painfully slow, and you were looking at it on a tiny black and green screen. It felt clunky, it was unfamiliar, and it was often really expensive to use. Plus, for developers trying to build things for it, it was a nightmare, all on top of those terrible security flaws we just talked about.
So, when you really boil it down, you get this tale of 2 sides. On one hand, you've got this amazing vision, an open, independent standard that just works everywhere. Awesome! But on the other hand, you have the harsh reality, terrible security, a frustrating user experience, and a business model that just didn't make sense for a lot of people. In the end, the disadvantages sadly just completely overshadowed all that potential.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, right? WAP itself is pretty much ancient history now. But its core challenges, that constant tug-of-war between accessibility, security, user experience, and making money, those are still very much alive today. So I'll leave you with this question. Do our modern mobile technologies still face the ghosts of WAP's challenges? Just, in a new disguise. Something to think about. Thanks for joining this explainer.